So we've got an amazing panel. We've got Tricia Phillips, who's the personal finance editor at the Mirror. So she should be able to answer some pretty specific ones. We've got Donna Ferguson, who's a freelance, who knows quite a lot about, you know, kind of all of this, both from both ends. And she also wrote a brilliant piece for Women in Journalism, which is on the website and on the Facebook page, kind of answering some kind of quite obvious questions about the kind of government scheme and what kind of money and help might be out there. So that's worth a look if you need it. And then the other person we've got is Gemma, Godfrey, who's the executive editor of something called Times Money Mentor, which aims to take a very un-money kind of view of personal finances. And she's like super helpful and also very kind of specific, very knowledgeable about finance and how it kind of relates to lifestyle. So I hope that for all of you, that should be really useful. Now, I'm going to kick off kind of with the panel a bit, because there were some questions that came through very strongly from the questions that were asked and sent to us before the session, which is, I think there sounds like there's a real problem out there with freelancers being told that there aren't any, you know, the only jobs going are going to people on staff, and the kind of lack of kind of freelance commissions. Donna, do you want to talk a bit to that and about kind of what your experience has been and what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I think, there's something that I've definitely been hearing a lot from freelancers on forums, and also people talking about rates being cut, and struggling to get paid for things that were commissioned before the lockdown that now either aren't going to run for a long time or just been sort of killed off. And you know, it is pretty tough out there, I think. And yeah, I mean, I think the key thing is just to try to keep trying, to keep pitching, and to try and maintain a really good, healthy relationship with the editors that you know you've written for before, and that you know that they like your work, and just check in with them and just keep saying, you know, is there anything, you know, here's some ideas, but I'm also, you know, I'm free if you hear of anything. Someone just got in touch with me actually, just literally before I came on this Zoom call, about the previous pitching session I did for Women in Journalism, to say that they were really helped by some advice that I'd given about, you know, just as I said, just emailing editors and saying I'm available. If you hear of anything or you want me to write anything, I'm here. And they that editor passed on her details to some other editor, and now she's got a 4-day-a-week writing job out of that. So sometimes it's just about kind of the contacts that you have and sort of nurturing those contacts, rather than necessarily trying always to get this exact pitching stuff right, because it is quite hard in this climate. But having said that, I would say keep pitching as well. It's just maybe you need to be a little bit more like touchy-feely with editors right now.
So in your experience, it's the kind of personal contact with people that's actually bringing forth the jobs.
Yeah, I mean,
and people that you know.
For me, definitely, my career, it's so much more about the relationships, and then developing the pitches to suit the editors, and like keep going with the same editor. It's not necessarily like you have this great idea and you think, oh, I'm going to pitch it here, I'm going to pitch it there, I'm going to pitch it there, I'm going to carry on trying to pitch it somewhere. It's like, actually, you just find a publication or a section that you really love and you really want to write for, and you just keep coming up with ideas for that particular editor and develop a relationship with that particular editor. That's how I sort of succeeded in my career, and I think that's what's stood me in good stead at this moment in time, because if you have sort of personal relationships with editors and they use you regularly, then, you know, they carry on doing that even in a crisis.
Yeah, that's great. And Tricia, just in terms of, so a freelancer who's had something commissioned and then maybe they say they're not going to run it, or they won't pay till publication, which seems to be ever further off. What rights do freelancers have to try and get paid, or what advice would you give them about negotiating some money?
You could negotiate a kill fee if you really want some money immediately, or just try and push them to put some sort of payment through for you. It's quite hard as an editor based in the office. At the moment, we're getting roped in to cover all sorts. Like, I'm writing 20 news stories a day on top of doing all my normal feature stuff. And so when people get in touch with me, sometimes I can't get back to them that day because I'm working sometimes 7 till 9, 10 o'clock at night already. And the last thing I want to do at 10 o'clock at night is try and put my thinking cap on and, you know, come up with some great ideas or read new ideas from somebody else. So I'd just say a little tiny bit of patience might be quite good, might go a long way at the moment, just from the point of view of somebody who's in the office and trying to deal with a desk, who are all working remotely, who many of them aren't really great with technology. And there's lots of, like, it's very disjointed, you know, being on staff at the moment, as well as trying to deal with freelance stuff. But I would say definitely negotiate either a kill fee if it's definitely not going to be used, because you're definitely entitled to that. Or if you can wait a bit, it's worth hanging on, because I've had things that were meant to go in, say, a month ago, but I've lost pages where the paper's gone down a bit because of costs. But then I have eventually ran them and I have paid people. And also to invoice, because a lot of people don't invoice. And so you don't get invoices for months. So if you don't invoice straight away, the earlier invoice, the quicker you're going to get paid. Often I'm chasing people for their invoices and for bank details, because obviously we can't pay them until we have that information. And then even once I've put them through, I'm quite efficient at paying people, but there's still a process in the office. So the quicker I get them on the system, the quicker somebody's going to get paid. But you'd be amazed at how many times I'm chasing freelancers for their invoices at the other side.
That's really good advice. So you're certainly not going to get paid if you haven't put in an invoice. So don't sit there feeling like you're owed money and then realise that you haven't actually asked for it.
Yeah, I would just say, though, from the freelance perspective, is some papers don't want you to invoice because they have like self-invoicing systems, and it can be quite difficult as a freelancer necessarily get your head around all the different things. And also with regard to the kill fee, although you should, you know, morally be entitled, you're not actually, like, according to the NEJ, you're not entitled to absolutely anything unless you've got it in writing that when you file, you will be paid for filing. If the actual arrangement, and it's same if it's kind of an unwritten arrangement, it's never been sort of identified as anything other than you're paid on publication, then if it's not published, you don't even have the right to a kill fee, which I find quite shocking, but legally you don't. The NEJ is really clear, and I've checked. So
yeah, no, that's really... So would you recommend now as a freelance, and Tricia, commissioning freelancers, would you recommend that given what's going on at the moment, that they say, look, you know, if you're not going to use this, what will the kill fee be?
Yeah,
or, can I invoice?
Yeah, I would actually be inclined to just ask that question at the moment, just to say that, you know, can I just find out what is your policy? Because all the papers will have policies. I mean, I don't think I've never ever not paid a freelancer, even if things have not been used, and even now I've not ever not paid anybody. And I'm quite anal about doing all my accounts and things. And you know, they laugh at me at work because I have lots of books and ticks and things, and I have systems that are a bit old school, but it means I keep on top of everything as well. But I would say that just being really upfront at the moment, and as an editor, I wouldn't be offended at all if somebody came to me and said, you know, I write this for you, but, you know, what would happen if it didn't get used? Because it's all very movable with, you know, like with every business at the moment, things are movable. And, you know, the papers are all struggling at the moment to keep afloat, especially print versions. And the costs are high, aren't they? So they're all trying to save a little bit of money to keep as many people and keep the papers going. So it's the same as every other business. But I would just say to people, and like Donna was saying earlier on, that personal relationship with the editors is really important, because all the writers I use, I really care about them, and I understand. You know, I've got friends who are freelancers. I've got a husband who's, you know, paid like on a freelance rate, so I know exactly what it's like getting money and not getting money. So I try personally and treat people as fair as I can, and I'm dead upfront with people. But I would say ask the questions, and I don't think anyone would be offended.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. Really good advice. Can I come to Gemma now, because we've been talking a bit about there's been a bit around about diversification, and if you're not getting much freelance work because a lot of the stuff there is going to staff jobs and the papers are smaller and that kind of thing. And what Gemma is part of is a real bit of diversification that the Times and the Sunday Times have done within the kind of money sphere. And often those are the places now which might have some money to pay freelancers. So Gemma, do you want to tell us a bit about what you're doing and what kind of things you're interested in?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd agree with you that there are still areas of growth, which is online. And, you know, obviously we're all about, you know, making money out of this. And what you're seeing is corporates are still obviously paying for sponsorship deals, but they're going to be doing it digitally, because obviously if people aren't going out their houses. So Times Money Mentor is predominantly online. Obviously we're integrated across the paper, so we're in different sections, but it was a good opportunity to actually have an integration point. So what we do is it's bringing together lifestyle and money issues. So it's all about how we help people understand how to navigate changing careers, changes in relationships, so getting married, getting divorced, and also, you know, family finances, how to teach your kids how to save, how to invest, kind of the whole life cycle. And definitely this is obviously an area of growth, especially, as I said, if it lines up with what corporates are doing, then there's money to be had, which is why then you'd have, you know, certain publications that are going to be focused on it as well. So it is definitely an area of growth. And we've seen, it's interesting at times like this as well, when people are incredibly fearful, people are also craving guidance. And that's, again, there's a massive advice gap out there. There's loads of information, but actually tangible advice on, you know, what to do next and what your next steps are. And then also what we also do is we link to products. It's all independent product reviews, but having, again, that life cycle of, okay, I've got a lifestyle need, and taking you on the journey of understanding what you need to do to afford that, and then actually having products off the back of it, then obviously, you know, we could get remuneration for that whole life cycle. Actually, I think is an area of growth in the market. So yeah, it could be. And I definitely think in an environment like this, the more people can do, the more that we can do online, and kind of, everybody talks about pivoting in business, but more that people can pivot towards where the demand is. I think that is, yeah, it's a smart move. Yeah.
And I'd say, you know, I completely diversified my own career from, I started out being a personal finance journalist and have completely diversified into education, sort of arts and hard news, investigations, all sorts of features. So, you know, it's certainly possible to diversify. The way to do that is to read the stuff you want to write, and to have a bit of confidence, and to basically to have a bit of balls about you and just go, I'm going to go for it, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to listen to that voice inside my head that says, I don't know how to write this stuff. Just, you know, I was lucky because I had the encouragement of an editor who was personal finance editor and then got promoted to the news desk at the Observer, and she really encouraged me. And I think that, you know, often you're your own worst enemy in these things. So there's no reason why, if you can write, you can't write about anything, because journalism is a skill, and you learn how to interview experts, and then you can apply that to any, and you learn how to write, so you can apply that to basically any scenario. It's just about having the confidence and being willing to, like, learn from mistakes and just pitch the desks that you want to write for.
And actually, just to complement that point, what I love about, again, this area of growth is what people are craving is, in an environment like this, when people are worried about their jobs, they're stuck at home, and obviously then, you know, arguments can happen with couples, etc. You have, again, a real lifestyle need, and it's really hammering home the fact that you need money to live. You know, it's affecting your job, your ability to earn, etc. But at the same time, we're not all experts in money, and so there is a really, really good opportunity for people that actually aren't in the money sections to be able to, but are very good at explaining things. You know, we do things like a lot of people stories. It's about making things relatable, and I think that if you have a skill of being able to write eloquently, make it engaging, make it relatable, then actually that's even more useful in areas that you wouldn't naturally have gone for, because you can bring a different angle and as I said, bring it to life. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a money angle to absolutely everything. I have to say, like Tricia, all the money editors are very good at looking after freelancers, because they wouldn't be working in personal finance journalism if they didn't care about, you know, looking basically people's rights, and they do tend to treat you well. So I know in other desks kill fees, and I agree. You know, I think Susan's put on the chat that kill fees are terrible, and I completely agree. Unfortunately, you're not even entitled to a kill fee, which I find shocking. You should be entitled to full pay, absolutely agree. But at least if you work for a personal finance editor, you will often get paid in full, because they do understand that. I mean, I've never had a personal finance editor commission me and not pay me in full.
Well, that's good to hear. And Tricia, what kind of stories do you think people are particularly interested in at the moment? What kind of thing are you running or interested in commissioning?
Lots of advice pieces, as Gemma said. People are craving any sort of advice, because people are panicking, they're anxious, they don't really know which way to turn. They're looking for somebody to just hold their hand and guide them to something, give them some good, strong, solid advice. I was just going to mention about the pitching thing as well, that I get a lot of people pitching me ideas, and bear in mind I work for the Daily Mirror and not the Sunday Times or anywhere like that. Yeah. And a lot of the ideas, you'll probably get this as well, Gemma, are just totally unsuitable. Like, there'll be case studies who live in £1 million house, there'll be families who go on 10 ski holidays a year. Well, you know, you're talking to people in the Mirror where a lot of them don't even own their own home. A lot of them have got homes, but they're, you know, they're just average families. They're not rich. They're just plodding along, a lot of them. Yeah, there are a few people who've got money, but that's the other thing I'd say for freelancers: pitch and just have a little think about, if you're pitching an idea to say me, is it really relevant for the Mirror? Is it not more the Mail? Is it not more the Sunday Times or the Observer, whatever? Because I get a lot of things that are, and I'm quite good. I do message people back and I give them a bit of advice and say, you know, this might work better for this section or that section. So I do pass things on, and I do have friends in the industry that I pass things on to, saying this might be good for you. But, you know, knowing the publication is really important.
And the only way to know a publication is to read it. Like, it's just crazy. Many freelancers think that the way to be successful in freelancing is to come up with great ideas and then find a place to put them. It's the other way around. You find a place you want to write for, and then you come up with a great idea that suits that publication. And you can only do that by reading and caring about that publication and the readers of that publication.
Yeah, I have to say, as an editor, there's absolutely nothing worse than people wasting your time pitching you things which are just never going to work. And I was, you know, used to be much more likely to take a pitch which said, you know, oh, I read your Life in the Day, you know, column every week, and I think this would be great for it, because at least then it shows that they're actually thinking about what you're up to.
I'm also amazed as a predominantly print journalist, although I do write for online as well, how many people don't ever read the print version of the paper, and then they come to me with ideas and they've seen like an odd feature of mine or something I've done online, but they've never seen the regular weekly section that I do, and you know, they and how much advice and stuff, and I just find it slightly, not insulting, but I just think it's very naive of somebody not to do it. It's worth paying 80p or whatever it is for paper these days, £1, whatever you pay, before you pitch for something, because that £1 could be really well spent to get you. Yeah. It might get you 500 quid, it might get whatever. You don't have to buy every paper every day, but at least if you're going to pitch to a few people, go and buy the sections, go and look at them, check the online thing as well. Just know where you're going and what you're doing, because at the moment, as I say, we're all a bit manic and working silly hours and doing about 10 people's jobs as we're, you know, trying to keep it all going. But you don't have the time to sort of spend, you know, normally I'd spend quite a lot of time going through ideas from people, but if I just see straight away that it's totally off balance, often I'll just say, I'm so sorry, I can't use those ideas. Whereas normally I'd actually sit and go through them a bit more thoroughly, and I would think, you know, that would be a really good one. It would work in this section in the Times, it would work or it might work on the Evening Standard, or it may work online. But at the moment, I haven't quite got that resource to do that now. So it's even more important that if people pitch me something, it needs to be well pitched and it needs to be relevant to the readership and the type of things I cover.
And Tricia, are you mainly using staff writers now? Because I mean, I know that because there's been a lot of huge pressure on costs going on. Does that mean that you're under pressure to use staff people rather than freelancers?
I'm mainly writing everything myself for most of the paper, I feel like, at the moment. I'm talking about becoming an expert in all sorts of things, and I have to cover things like I have to do the city page when Graham's not around, I have to do consumer when Rookie's not around, and I have to become an expert in everything every day, because things get thrown at you from the desk saying, oh, can you just knock a version of this out? And it's something, I don't know, random about like tin something or others, or I don't know, I can't think of it, like something the motoring correspondent should probably do that I know nothing about. But you just have to get on with it, because you can't say, oh, I can't do it, because they just expect you to do it. So at the moment, I've got a very limited freelance budget, but I do use freelancers. And when I do the other part of my job, I do a lot of commercial stuff. So I write a lot of the specials that we put in the paper that are sponsored by like your TSBs and people like that. So I do use a lot of freelancers. I usually come up with the ideas and then I commission other people to write those. But obviously at the moment, there's not as much of that work going on. But when it comes back again, I'll be back in the market for some freelancers. So.
No, that's good to know. We've had quite a lot of questions around kind of budgeting tips. So I think this is a kind of, you know, why don't you kick off on this one, Gemma, and we'll come back to you, Tricia. But what if you have suddenly had a big cut in your income and you're really worried about kind of trying to make your money go a bit further in budgeting? What do you say your top 5 tips, Gemma? What do you say to people who, because you must be coming up against this a lot?
Yeah, I mean, the most important thing is that when you're really fearful and you're really worried, it's to take control where you can. And obviously, everybody would love to say, go out and make more money. But that isn't always possible. And actually being able to just cut cut your costs is something that's controllable. So there's a rule of thumb, which is to shrink, swap or cut payments. So basically knowledge is power. And I must admit, even though I'm a money expert or whatever, when you don't know or have visibility on your costs, it can seem really overwhelming. So just sitting down, I love a spreadsheet. I'm a complete geek. I know, whatever. We're not all like that. Some people are normal. And there are loads of budgeting apps that are available, or just literally printing out your bank statements and just going through it in a fine line or whatever. But first of all, it's to shrink the costs that you've got. So things like if you're on, certain broadband packages, can you just reduce that to really the core package or whatever, cut it all together? Swapping things for own brands, it's common sense, or just cutting things like gym membership or whatever it is that you don't need at the moment. But taking control where you can and saying that you're saving more money will help you feel a bit more in control. So even if it's just, psychologically. Also making small manageable changes is really important, because I think we can get really overwhelmed by saying, right, I need to save $1,000 or save a big amount of money. Whereas actually, if you just save, £10 here, £10 there, then actually very quickly it can add up and you can save the money that you need. So making small manageable changes, emotionally remembering why you're saving money is also a good one to keep you on track, photos of your loved ones or whatever it is. I think that's really important. And then automate where you can as well, because we're all really busy. I don't have time to sit down there and look every week or month or whatever. So if you can just automatically put money, like siphon money away, a good tip as well is saving before you spend. So if you actually, if you're being paid, and even let's say you're being furloughed and it's a smaller amount, when the money hits your account, if you're able to just squirrel away a certain amount of money straight then and there before you have a chance to spend it or see it, that's also a really good automatic way to protect yourself from spending the money. I think that's it. Just know where your money is. Always check around, always shop around, see what the best savings accounts are. But also work as a team. I think when it comes to money and relationships, I think arguments about money is the biggest determinant of divorce. And we can often feel resentful to our partner if we're not contributing the same and things like that. And I think at times like these, having a really open conversation about who's contributing what, where the pressure points are, how we can help each other, I think is really important. And then final point, if I can just make one other point is, yeah, sure. And most people are focused on saving money, but there was a question that I did see come in from somebody that said, is this now the time to cut things like pension contributions and savings and investments? And of course, a lot of people don't have the choice. So absolutely, if you need to take mortgage holidays or things like that, or stop paying into a pension, absolutely, buy yourself some time. But there is a cost to that eventually. And it's more expensive later on. If you save, if you £100 saved today that you don't put away in an investment or a pension or a savings account, actually could be £1,000 by the time you want to spend it or retire or whatever. So, I just think balancing short-term need with long-term need is also another tip.
So you would say to people that if they can, they should continue with their pension contributions, mortgage, whatever it is, rather than thinking they'll do a 3-month holiday or whatever.
So for the people out there that don't have the choice, take it. If you need breathing space, it's on offer, take it. However, there is a cost to it. So if you take a mortgage holiday, and this is a really important point that's not advertised, obviously, is if you take a holiday from your mortgage, you're still going to be charged. They're still going to calculate the interest payments, and they're going to add that cost into the cost overall. So you're going to actually increase your debt burden. And what you could see if you don't increase the term of your mortgage is your monthly payments. So you still have to pay it back over the same time period. When you come out of the lockdown, your mortgage payments may actually be higher every month, just slightly. So
that's scary. I don't think most of us have taken that one on board.
You can always extend the term of your mortgage, and then it will stay the same. You'll just owe it for longer. So there are all these ways around it. But look, there's no such thing as a free lunch. No bank out there is saying, here, have free money. So just I think we all need to focus on that.
Yeah, Tricia, do you want to come in on that? What would be your top budgeting tips, and what should people be doing?
One of my top tips on doing a lot around debt is to be really honest with yourself about exactly how much you've got coming in and exactly how much you're paying out. Include everything. Don't hide, pretend that credit card doesn't exist just because it costs me 50 quid in minimum payments, which I'm sure a lot of us do. Our shopping habit that we have. And I'd say that I always say that people go back to a slightly old school and just write things down, because I think you remember things more if you sit and write them down on a list and say, this is exactly what I'm paying out. And you can sit and do scribbles, you can make notes. What else? I would say on the mortgage holidays and stuff, I've done a feature for tomorrow about how much it's actually going to cost you to take a mortgage break, which is quite interesting. And I compared taking a mortgage break to adding on some extra time on your mortgage, and the mortgage breaks are definitely a cheaper option. It depends on the size of your loan, the interest you're paying. It's obviously individual, but on a typical mortgage, it's going to cost you less to take the break and then just play catch up.
Okay, that's really interesting. And what about some of the other things that the government's saying? So that you can get a 3-month holiday on your mortgage. What are the other things that might be available to people that they might not know about?
One thing that's helpful, I think, for freelancers is that you don't need to pay your July tax bill until January. So basically, they've delayed that payment. So normally, as a freelancer, you'd be expected to make a payment in January and a payment in July. But so the July payment was actually for the 2018-2019 tax year. So that should have already been saved, and that should already be in an account waiting to be paid. But actually, you now don't have to pay that until January. So if you're pretty confident already that your income this year is going to suffer, then you know that your tax bill come January, you're probably going to have less tax to pay. So therefore, you can potentially eat into some of the money that you put aside for your July tax bill this year, based on the fact that you probably will have a lower income.
Yeah, no, I've been going through that one with my husband, actually, because because a lot of people will have that money saved up. So you're saying that is a kind of pot that you could dip into if things are really tough.
You need to be quite careful, because obviously you need to make sure that whatever tax you do owe, you will have to pay. So you need to think through whether you're, you want to make sure that whatever tax you owe on the 31st of January next year, you will have that money in your account. But your tax bill potentially it's for the 2018, so 2019-2020 tax year.
Yeah,
that one that just be liable to pay that in January. So basically, if that one you think will be lower because you're not earning as much, perhaps it started to affect in the lockdown, something happened, then potentially you'll basically, if you can earn that money back, you can spend it. That's what I'm saying.
That's something. What about you, Tricia? What would be your suggestions?
I was going to say that my one thing that I've noticed, and the people I've been talking to with readers and stuff, is that I keep hammering on about people trying to have a little bit of a savings safety net, and that has actually come into its own at the moment. But the only thing I would say is that a lot of people have got savings and they're scared to use them at the moment. I keep having to say to people, the reason you've got the savings is so you've got something to fall back on to use during these tough times. I think a lot of people have got this little safety net and they're terrified to dip into it, whereas I keep trying to say, Bill, that is why you've saved up. So use your safety net before you do anything else, because all of the help, apart from any grants that you get, which obviously don't have to be paid back, but a lot of people are not eligible for those. If you do any loans, you put anything back, whether you don't pay your tax, whether you have a 3-month holiday on your credit card, your mortgage, your car finance, anything else, all of those things are going to have to be caught up with at some stage. And like say with a credit card, if you don't pay your bill for 3 months, the interest is going to get added on. If people are living a little bit near the edge of their limit, they might find out the interest getting added on pushes them over their limit. So it could put them in a not a great position later on. So I would say to people, if you've got a little bit of savings, use them, because that's what you've got them for, before you take on any extra debt or you push yourself into a little bit of debt. But
and Tricia, how are you are the kind of car finance companies or the banks or whatever are they being good about that 3-month window? And what about people who are renting?
I'd say most of the companies have actually woken up that they've just got to get real and they've got to help people, and most of them are being pretty helpful, getting a few little complaints from readers who are struggling, mainly because they can't get through on the telephone because there's so many people trying to get help in one go. So I'd always say go online first. Most of the banks and all the financial firms have got loads of information on their websites where you can find out what they're offering, how you get that help. And most of them you can put in initial applications online, and then they'll come back to you, and that saves you spending 2 days hanging on the phone. For renters, it's not quite as straightforward, because although the government have told landlords that they can't start any court proceedings or they can't do court proceedings for 3 months, there are still quite a lot of rogue landlords out there. And I was talking to Shelter recently, and they're saying that they're still getting a lot of people who are getting threatened with eviction. But then I just always say to anybody who's struggling with rent, just go to Shelter first and talk to them, because they are amazing. I spent a day with them recently on their helpline, and they're like gods. They know so much stuff, and they just know exactly who to put people in touch with. So I always say to people, just go there first, find out where you stand.
And actually, can I just say also another good tip, just following on from that, because that's really, really good advice, is it's really important to speak to the bank, because if you, let's say, for example, you make assumptions and you stop doing payments, or you fall into an unarranged overdraft, the fees are horrendous. So they do have all those measures there, but the first port of call is to try and contact them to try and make sure that they're aware of the holidays that you're taking and things like that.
Yeah,
and you have to actually arrange stuff. You can't just stop doing payments with anything. You need to contact your provider with every financial and every bill you've got, because if you get into arrears, you often can't get these mortgage holidays or these credit card holidays, so you need to contact providers straight away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, kind of in advance. Jen,
yes.
Should we bring, I'm aware that we've got lots of people kind of on here who might like to speak. Should we go to some of the people who had specific questions?
Yeah, absolutely. And just to say, I've got a bit of a list of people to come to, but do you throw anything into the chat if you've got anything that you want to pick up a little bit more, or there's something you want to chat about that we haven't come to. But we'll go to Lily Cantor first. I'll just unmute you now. I had a bit of a question about people that maybe slip through the cracks to a certain extent. You should be able to chat now, Lily.
Hi, yeah, thanks, Jen. Hi, everyone. Yeah, my question really was about so those self-employed people that are not eligible for the government grant. I mean, I'm one of those. I checked my eligibility the other day, and I'm not eligible because my earnings. It wasn't, I've been freelance for 5 years, but it's not been my main source of income until 1920, and they're not taking that tax year into consideration. So I just wondered, I mean, I should know this myself, I'm a personal finance journalist, but is there anything on Jet that I'm eligible for? I think that this is one of the things we'll as the weeks go by.
I think you broke up a little bit there, but I think the kind of general scope of that was for freelancers who might have fallen through the cracks for whatever reason. Is there anywhere else that kind of comes to mind that you could turn to as a journalist, or any kind of experts that you might want to consider?
Yeah, I mean, I could take this one because I don't know if you saw on the Women in Journalism website, I wrote a whole article about the places that journalists specifically can go to for help outside of the government. So there's several charities that exist to help journalists. They don't necessarily award huge grants, but there's the journalism charity. There's the printing charity, which has got quite a lot of money. I can't remember. There's two others as well. There's one for freelancers called Rory Peck Fund, and there's another one. Do you remember what that was, Hilary?
Well, there's the journalist charity, isn't there, who have got giving out quite a lot of grants.
Yeah.
There was the NUJ one as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, NUJ, that was it, the NUJ Extra. So as long as you've been a journalist and you meet their specific criteria, so usually I think it's you've been a journalist for at least a year, then you can ask them for money and they will help you out. But obviously they're trying to help the people who are in situations where they've got financial dependence and they're not able to pay their bills. So they're trying to give to the people with the most pressing need. But at least and that might provide you some security, that if you do get into a really terrible situation, there are charities out there specifically for journalists that you can turn to for help.
Yeah, and we know that the journalist charity has given out about, I think, between £30,000 and £40,000 just recently to journalists. So there are some people that you can go to in trouble, and they do actually have surprisingly deep pockets, some of these charities.
I've just posted the link to Donna's piece in the chat.
Great, which has got
it's on the news section of the website.
Brilliant. So for anyone who wants the kind of concrete details of what Donna was saying about people who've got some grants who might be able to help you if you're really in trouble, that's a good place to start.
And the journalist charity also helps dependents too. So if you're dependent of a journalist, so that's important as well. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And also it helps. It also helps, so for example, if your income hasn't been affected, but your husband has completely lost his job, or basically someone in the family, the income has been dramatically affected, then even then you can turn to them. So it's not necessarily even that you have your income affected, it's your whole family, your household income has been affected.
That's good. Should we take another question, Jem?
Yeah, for sure. Right, so we'll go to Margarita, who's here, and just had a bit of a question about, technically how to chase payments. You should be able to chat now. Let's see if...
We've got Margarita.
Oh, we can hear the background noise, but we can't hear you. I'll try and work that out. But in the meantime, there was a question from someone actually who I don't think kind of actually made it into the chat, but was kind of just talking around, oh, hang on, sorry, I'll just mute that so you can actually hear what I'm saying. Sorry. Let's try Lisa. Maybe that'll be easier. Lisa, can you hear us? I had a question around like whether women are worse off, and if you can't speak, it'll be still interesting to, I think, hear the panel's thoughts on whether women are a little bit more worse off at this.
I can hear
you.
you.
There you are.
Hey, hi Lisa.
Hello. Yeah, I mean, I was just wondering, are female freelancers worse off than male freelance journalists? I mean, I don't know if anyone can answer that question, but it just came to mind.
Well, I think it's often clear from a lot of the kind of major news programs. I was watching the BBC News the other day. There seem to be hardly any women on the screen at all. So I think there definitely seems to be kind of less women around. And there's been a lot of interesting, it's a very good piece by Helen Lewis in The Atlantic, formerly of Women in Journalism, our deputy. And she's written about how the coronavirus has impacted women much more all over the world, because that women often do the double shift, don't they? That they're not just doing they're not just working in the office, they're also coming home and looking after family or caring for older relatives, and if you're trying to do that while working from home, that's a complete nightmare. So there are less women around, and women have got less time during this, and that's a matter of
I actually wrote about this survey on Sunday, and it was amazing. There's actually been a whole survey by the University of Cambridge that's found that the average man is doing about 4 hours of homeschooling and childcare each working day, and the average woman is doing about 6 hours of homeschooling and childcare. And they're finding that, for example, women's contributions to academic papers has dropped off, and women's contributions outside the home has dropped off, while as when women are at home, whether they're working at home or not working at home, no matter which one, that's where the gender divide is. As long as they're in the home, they are doing less than the man. They're doing more than the man, and therefore they're potentially doing less work. So
and actually just to complement that as well, I think women are falling behind because of three things, there is a risk. The risk we face is that the crisis is going to hurt women's finances disproportionately more than men's, because first of all, we have already been for years underpaid. Secondly, women tend to invest less of our money to grow it, and now there's already research out saying that we're less likely to take advantage of the falls in financial markets to be able to capture future gains. So you've got men there that are saying, well, markets are cheaper, they're getting in. Whereas women are just experiencing all the falls and not necessarily also getting the upside. So it could exacerbate it. Yeah.
What do you think, Tricia? What are you finding?
I do quite a lot about women and the gender pay gap. So I think women get a tough deal with everything because they already earn less money, they get less put into their pensions. So if they've been furloughed, they're going to be earning even less money than men now. So they're not going to be able to keep up with their pension savings. And it really worries me because I've just known a feature today saying that a third of people haven't got any sort of private pension savings, and it's 2 in 5 of women. And I don't know how they're going to survive because the state pension isn't enough for anybody to live on. So I think this is going to hit women's finances and put them back even further. So I think they have to try and do everything they can to keep up, say, pension payments as best they can. I know it's tough, but I still think people should continue to put in as much as they can. And I think women should try and become as independent as they can with their finances.
There's also there's another interesting angle as well, if you don't mind me jumping in, which is
go for it.
About some of the government incentives. So the government has launched something called bounce back loans to help high growth companies, help startups, but it's all reliant in order to qualify, obviously because they want to make sure that that there isn't fraud out there. It's reliant on companies having raised money previously, and any loan they give them, private investors have to match it. And women, I think out of all the money that went into startups or high growth companies last year, only 1% went to female founders. So it's so hard for women to be raising money anyway. So actually to qualify for some of these government loans, it's going to be, again, disproportionately harder for women. So again, I think there is a risk there. There is a risk.
I think there's definitely, from when I was researching this article that I wrote, and I spoke to, some freelance women from the #1 freelance media group on Facebook. And there was, it's really common that a woman goes freelance after she's had a baby. That's what happened to me. And I think a lot of women, it does happen, and you go freelance and you go part-time, and then your income is lower than your partner. So when something like this happens, your partner's got a secure job and they've got a higher income. So obviously their job in this climate is being prioritised, whereas your career is completely, like this is what happened to one of the women I interviewed, just completely, she's given up on her career in lockdown because she has to allow her husband to focus on his career. And she's a feminist, and, she believes in choice, and that's not what she wants. But, it's the right thing for her family because her husband's job is potentially vulnerable and he has to be productive. So that's the problem facing, I think, a lot of women right now. I think probably female freelancers are being affected detrimentally by this.
Yeah. Sorry, that's quite depressing. Let's have something a bit more on, Gemma.
Right, I've got my questions all back in order now, so hopefully this should work. We've got Liz, who had a bit of a question around kind of dealing with requests from editors around pay. So you should be able to speak now, Liz.
All right, hello. Yeah, I've got a regular monthly few pages that I do for a magazine, and they asked me to take a pay cut. Well, and but then they backdated it for stuff that I'd been commissioned for and had already sent in, and they kind of asked me to backdate it right back to March, I think it was. So I just wondered what people thought about that.
What kind of percentage pay cut? How much is
they want to drop it down, what everyone's talking about, so you get 80%. So
they want you to backdate a pay cut?
Yes. Just stuff I'd already done and which had already been commissioned at the higher rate.
That sounds
How
bad
much
to me.
do you rely on that income then from that magazine?
Sorry?
How much do you rely on that work from that magazine?
Well, not massively, but it was just, I thought it was an interesting principle, and the magazine's I won't name this, but it's sort of in the difficulty anyway, so,
What do you, I personally, I would consider walking away, as hard as it is, because I just think, it's like, as an individual, it's tempting to just agree. But then if you think if every single person in that situation just agrees, then they're not going to keep up the rates for all freelancers.
Yeah.
You see, the moment that anybody accepts a rate cut, starts looking for lower pay, it never goes up, does it? But no freelancer really ever gets a pay rise. So it's just saying, look, you know what? I'm not going to accept this, and I'm not going to accept the pay cut backdated. That was not the deal. And actually, if you want my work and you want my quality of my work, the only thing I can suggest is that I write a shorter piece, fewer words, it takes me less time. I'll do it for a lower fee in that case. But what I'm not going to do is spend the same amount of time for less pay. Unfortunately, I have other problems as a freelancer that staff writers don't have. So I can't accept that.
What do you think, Tricia? That's difficult at the moment, isn't it? Because lots of staff people are taking pay cuts.
The problem with, say, at the Mirror at the moment is that we've all had a pay cut and we had it backdated. We didn't have any choice on that. So, and also they've furloughed quite a lot of staff. So it's quite hard for us to put up a good case for anything else when there's that going on in the company. I get there with the freelance. I would tend to agree with Donna that I would decide whether I definitely needed that work, and I'd try and renegotiate, like either to write shorter pieces or maybe give up on that, on that magazine if you don't really need the money. Because, like Donna says, if people don't make a stand and don't value themselves, then nobody else is going to. And I know for a fact that I haven't been able to give any of my freelancers a pay rise for a couple of years because we've been cutting back and back and back. But I've tried to fight to keep them as much as to keep as much money as I can. But then I know a lot of publications aren't the same, and they just think, oh, I'll find somebody else to do it. But I think
what do you think, Gemma?
I think it's hard because there's two sides to this equation. There's them backdating the cuts, which is really hard because you already did the work. So from I guess a legal or a gentleman's handshake, or from an understanding or contractual perspective, actually they hired you for work, and they agreed to pay you a certain amount of money, and that should just be honoured. I think going forward, though, everybody is in a tougher scenario, and there is a view for, yes, you could stand up, but I think if everybody's having pay cuts, there's less of a say you can say there, and it's more about, do you need the job? Fine, take the job, and then see if you can supplement your income, with other jobs as well. And I just think in this environment, the thing that we're gonna find as a long-lasting change for this is obviously people working more flexibly, people working from home, but I also think career-wise as well, people being more used to having jobs here, there, having to be more flexible. So as a staff, Sorry.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Gemma. I was just going to say, I think as a staff writer, you have so much more job security. You do have, the pension contributions from your employer. You have a sense that if you're made redundant for some reason, there's going to be potentially some kind of payoff or something like that. As a freelancer, that contract could disappear overnight. And actually, if they want to pay you less, they need to commission fewer words, and it's as simple as that. And they should be employing their staff writers, or they're doing more themselves. And that's the business. They're running a business, and if they need to keep that business going by reducing staff, that's their decision. But I think accepting as a freelancer a pay cut, which especially backdated, is just wrong. And I think, you should make the case that the quality of your work stands up, and that you're willing to provide a shorter article for that fee, but that's it. I mean,
no, Donna, I can completely understand why you think that, but I think in the current climate, that's a hard one, particularly when lots of people on the staff are also taking cuts all over the place. But I'm sure that's an unpopular view. Have we got another question? I realize we've got about 10 minutes left, so let's try.
For sure. Let's try and get through a few more. Rue, we're going to go to you now. Hopefully, you should be. Yeah, you're unmuted.
Hi everyone. I'm sorry I haven't made an appearance. I'm not looking very presentable at the moment. The outlook, sadly, is grim, as you say. And I was wondering if, I work at the BBC, I freelance with the BBC, and shifts are drying up. And I was wondering how it would look in terms of, I'm obviously now in a stage where I'm considering what can I do as a quote unquote side hustle, but at the same time as a journalist, because money is a huge issue, especially if you're a woman. It's hard, it's so much harder. What is your advice in terms of copywriting perhaps, or other options like that? What would you suggest?
I'd suggest going on a course. So there's lots of online courses on, for example, how to diversify your income, take up copywriting, or potentially you could, as a broadcast journalist, do a bit present. I mean, obviously not now, it's difficult with the lockdown, but there's certain skills that you add to your bow, and just do some. I would definitely recommend doing an online course, not necessarily a very expensive one. You can get one probably about 100, 200 quid, something like that. Find them, and just so you know what you're doing, and then trying to find out from the tutors a few contacts, agencies potentially. But yeah, I'd say that's a straightforward way in.
Emma, what would you think? What would you reckon?
I mean, it's interesting in times like this. As I said, I think it's about looking where the demand is, and there's going to be more demand for online expertise. So things like, again, it's just kind of common sense in terms of cleaning up your online profile, make sure you've got good LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, whatever like that, and trying to use those skills there. Because actually, I guess the upside, I'm trying to put a silver lining on all of this, is that with the way that technology has developed, it's never been easier for you to actually showcase your skills. So if you want to carve out your niche to be an expert in a certain subject area, or you're looking to kind of build your portfolio because you want to get different roles, talking about different things, do it. Do lives, do webinars, do posts, and trying to get out there, and then hopefully people will pick up on your content as well, and you'll be able to showcase. I think the hardest thing to do is to sit in front of somebody and try and sell yourself. The easier thing to do is actually have content that is gaining traction, is having a bit of a following, that you can say, well, listen, people do like my work, and here's the proof, and then you can kind of get work that way. So
Yeah, and when it comes to side hustles, what side hustles do we think are particularly appropriate for journalists? What other kinds of things could they be good at?
Yeah, it's interesting. So as I said, anything on the digital side, like digital marketing side, social media side, because I think one of the things that, again, journalists have that I always craved is an amazing understanding of what people want, and every company out there wants to know that. So you know what people are asking about, you know what people are talking about. So for you to be able to deliver something like that is really important. It means that you could end up, there are other side hustles to be able to work with companies to be able to pass on that knowledge. So there are a lot of corporates out there. Again, another gap in the market is corporates find it very hard to engage consumers and their next customers. And you and everybody on this call or whatever is very good at doing that. So, you know, there are things around that. I know it's easier said than done, and all this takes a bit of work. And then there's obviously just being smarter with your money as well, and trying to help save it and grow it so that, you know, that does the work while you sleep, because the end goal is to be able to make money while you sleep as well. So. And
there's also blogging, because Faith, one of our participants, is actually you're an award-winning blogger, Faith.
Oh, 2 seconds. Let me unmute.
She's one of it. And so, you know, you can make money from blogging, can't you?
I think yes, you can make money from blogging. It's something that I originally started being in the very familiar situation that I went freelance after having my first child, and that was in 2008. So I've been through one economic crash already, and that was part of the reason that I turned to blogging, because some of the freelance was drying up. The one thing I would say is it's not necessarily a quick hit. But it is something now where I think I genuinely get journalism work off the back of my blog, and I also get companies working with me on sponsored posts because I'm a journalist. So it has helped with both. And in terms of what Gemma was saying about upping your profile, then it is examples of my work, and companies have referred to it when commissioning me. But it can't promise instant results.
Faith, can you tell us a bit more about what your blog does?
My blog is called Much More With Less, and it was originally sparked when we moved to the country. We kind of quit our corporate jobs and living on a lower income. And so right now it covers, my blog's very, very wide. My own background is as a personal finance specialist. So it's everything from frugal food at one end of it, through budget family activities, right through to more hardcore investing and pensions, and trying to make the case that women should make the most of their money and start investing if they possibly can.
Okay, great. So what would your 5 budgeting tips be for our people out there who are having trouble?
Look at your biggest bills. So starting with the mortgage, possibly the payment holidays, switching, as Gemma said, all your utility bills and so on. Can you get a better deal? Go through every single one of your direct debits. What can you possibly get rid of?
Yeah.
And for most households, after their mortgage or rent and their utility bills, the biggest one is food. Mm-hmm. And I mean, in some ways, we can't all be eating out all the time now. It's just not possible. But fundamentally, if you can switch to cheaper options and use all of the food you do have, so you're not throwing money in the bin, that's going to make a big difference. Anything you'll cook for yourself, you won't be paying somebody else to do the work that you would with pre-prepared food or deliveries.
Okay, so that we're all having to do that anyway, aren't we? Most of us, if we're not right in the middle of the town. I think we've got time, Jem, for one more question if we've got somebody out there, and then we should start.
Yes, let's. I know Hilly wants to have a quick word at the end as well. But there was one question actually that I thought was quite interesting. I don't think Alex is in the chat, but I wanted to put to you. So someone's kind of asked around how individuals who are working, so they're in a PAYE job, but how they can persuade their employers to kind of reimburse them for any financial burden they've got. So perhaps they've needed to buy office equipment, or they've needed to upgrade their broadband and stuff. So whether the panel had any tips around that, if there are any people in staff jobs here that would like a bit of advice.
I think you've just got to speak to your employer, because we get given all of our equipment from work. We got our computers, we got everything that we need, except I haven't got a printer or anything. And so I can't print anything out, so I have to remember everything and just write loads of notes. I'd say with most companies, yeah, my brain's not great at the moment. I'd say with most companies, you just need to find out. A lot of companies are letting people claim their broadband bill, because obviously they're using their home broadband. They're letting people claim any or part of their energy bill, some of their mobile phone bill if they're using that, or their home phone. I think it's just asking, really, because I think if you don't ask, you don't get. A lot of people are too scared to ask, but I think it's quite a reasonable question to say to your boss, I'm using my home phone, I'm using my broadband. can I put something through my expenses or to be reimbursed for it? So I think first thing to do is ask your boss and find out what you might be entitled to and whether they will cough up anything. Some of them might be meaner than others, but it's worth asking.
Am I right in thinking there's £6 a week or something you can claim back in tax? I think I read that somewhere. Does anyone recall that? There's something like £6 that, you know, if you're working from home, you can somehow get £6 a week from HMRC or something in your tax bill.
Tricia?
I don't know. I hope you can. I'm going to claim it. I've been waiting for 8 weeks.
Have a look. I think there's definitely £6, Tricia.
I think you're right. I think you're right. I think you need to be able to prove that you're working the majority of your time from home. There are a few little checks HMRC say, but there's definitely tax savings to be made as well. Yeah, that's a good one.
Okay, well that strikes me as a good kind of positive note to end on. Thank you so much to all our fantastic panelists, Gemma, Donna, Tricia. Thanks so much for coming along. Gem, thanks for being super brilliant on the tech as always, and really nice to see some of you widgers out there, Faith and Margarita and Lisa and the other ones who've come on. It's great to see you all in your places. And part of the point about doing these webinars is to give everyone a sense that they're really not on their own, that we're part of the community and that we're all here to try and help. And so we really appreciate you all kind of calling in, and you know, we're all here to help if we can. And I think it's really important that we help each other. So Hilly, what do you want to say, darling?
Yeah, just want to say thanks again to everybody so much. That was really useful, and thanks Eleanor, brilliant chairing as always, and Kate for setting the whole thing up, and Gem for being such a great facilitator. Just want to let you know what's coming up over the next few weeks. Next week we're going to do a special event for the current crop of graduates, God love them, and people at entry level about the jobs market and what kind of work they can look for. Gem is the sort of world expert on this with Journo Resources, and we'll also have Sue Ryan, who runs the Daily Mail trainee scheme and knows a thing or two about what makes people stand out and what it's like working in a very professional environment, and we'll have some more people with that. Donna's doing another of her fabulous pitching workshops on the 19th. I was going to say it's worth every penny, but as it's probably going to be free for most of you, let's invest in that. We're going to also start running our own WiJ Literary Festival over the summer, because so many of our members write books and all their events, lovely events and festivals have been cancelled. So I think first up is Eleanor's going to talk to Christina Lamb, the brilliant chief foreign correspondent at the Sunday Times. I think that's down for the 2nd of June at the moment. So
she's done an amazing book called Our Bodies, Their Battlefields, and she's talking about kind of women war reporters and reporting what happens to women in war. It's not an easy read, the book, but it's really, really important. So we'll be talking about that.
So we're going to keep going all over the summer with some lovely and some more uplifting things and fun things, we hope. So keep watching your email, and please tweet about us too at WiJ_UK. Thank you.
All right, thanks everyone. Thanks for coming. See you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.